You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Ruth Cabal. In this episode, we speak to President Bongbong Marcos's cabinet members to know more about his policy directions following his first State of the Nation address. President Bongbong Marcos says infrastructure is the backbone of the country's economy. He vows not only to continue, but to also expand the massive infrastructure program of the Duterte administration.
We shall confidently build on this firm foundation established by my predecessor as it is in building an edifice. We must keep the momentum and aspire to build better, more. Necessarily, infrastructure development will remain a very high priority in our drive for growth and employment.
So from build to build better, more. Joining us now, Public Works and Highways Secretary Manuel Bonoan. Thank you for joining us, Secretary Bonoan.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, can you talk us through what President Marcos meant as build better, more?
Yes, well, he gave instructions actually to me that we have to continue with the build program, but we make sure that the projects that we're going to implement will be better this time and they will last long, you know. And yes, of course, the projects that we'll implement will be redounding to support the economic recovery of the government at this point in time, no? So he gave us several pointers actually on how to cope up with the infrastructure development of the country. Like I said, we have to address traffic congestion issues, particularly in inter-regional connections, so that we can provide unimpeded travel by our motorists from one region to another, and thereby reducing the cost of goods and services, so to speak.
But the Duterte administration promised in its build program that it was going to be the golden age of infrastructure. But if you look at the list of the projects that were completed, about 1/3 or 1/4 only. So it's going to be a big task for the Marcos administration. How confident are you that you can build better and build more?
Well, I think, well, as the President said, we have to continue all the projects that had been started, finish them at the earliest possible time so that they can now immediately contribute to our economic development program, because we are now in financial constraints that we are suffering right now. So he said continue. He doesn't need to give credit to himself actually, but just continue and build all these projects that were started by the last administration. At the same time, he said we have to look back also at the pipeline and look at all the priority projects that could immediately contribute actually to economic development, particularly in the agricultural sector, tourism, and the interlinkages with other transportation modes.
There was a list released by the past DPWH administration. Parang more than 80 pa ho yung naiwan na infrastructure flagship projects. Ano yung magiging priority po under your leadership?
Well, under DPWH, I think we will have to address, as I said, yung traffic congestion problems of interregional connections. If you like, we would like to address the entire Maharlika Highway from Cagayan all the way to Mindanao, you know, because it has outlived its original design during the time of the father of the president. And since then, there are so many congestion issues along this line, particularly in town centers where they have evolved economic activities and things like this. So we want to take a closer look at this problem so that we can provide unimpeded safe travel all along from Cagayan all the way to Mindanao.
Kasama po dun sa priorities before, you had bridges and
Bridges
expressways,
as well.
airports. Kayo po in particular, may mga particular projects na po ba?
Yes. For one thing, I think we are looking at actually the interconnection of some islands in the Philippines. Like, for one thing, we are planning out the possible connection of Iloilo to Guimaras to Negros, you know. And linking all these three islands with really a potential impact on economic development in the Visayas.
Especially tourism din, no? That's also one of the priorities.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Boosting tourism.
Definitely.
Isa sigurong major concern is funding, because in the past, the Duterte administration, more than, data from NEDA said that more than half were loans or official development assistance. But President Marcos mentioned about private-public partnership.
Yes, of course. He said, well, we'll have to continue to encourage and entice the private sector to participate in the infrastructure development of the country, especially for projects or for investments that are actually good for private investors, particularly like traffic congestion issues, expressways that leading to other regions and things like this. So we will continue with that. And he has asked us to really entice the private sector.
And then you mentioned also, Secretary, that kasama dun sa priorities yung traffic, interregional connections.
Yes.
And in the SONA of President Marcos, he said that one of his priorities also is food security. So, yeah, in relation to this, ano pong mga programs ng DPWH?
Yes, I think this is one area where he specifically gave his instructions to us that we have to actively participate in the convergence program with other agencies like the Department of Agriculture, National Irrigation, to provide the necessary road support, farm-to-market roads.
Yes.
Actually, that should give them, the farmers, better access and more transportation needs, actually, to link to the main lines. And that will also reduce costs in transporting goods. So, along these lines, the convergence programs in agriculture, convergence programs in tourism, convergence program in the other modes of transport.
And also, in terms of other projects, he said full speed ahead in improving the railway system, modernizing airports and seaports. Ano po naman ang mga particular projects for this?
Well, I think we have to link the roads. As far as the department is concerned, you know, we are more concerned about the road sector. And we have to link up with the other modes of transport,
Yes.
like linking them to the airports, to the seaports, and to the railroads, so that we have a coordinated and efficient transport system in the country.
Yung siguro very interesting din yung mga, like the first subway in Metro Manila. Ano pong status nun? Magpapatuloy po ba yon?
I think magpapatuloy palagi ko yan because it's ongoing naman yung construction, but this is under the Department of Transportation. But we have seen it that it's still ongoing. It's an ongoing program of the department.
Like I mentioned earlier, konti lang po kasi yung natapos with the Build program of the Duterte administration. Have you identified possible lapses, or ano po ba yung itutuloy nyo at hindi nyo itutuloy dun sa nakita nyo from the previous administration?
There are projects in the past administrations that were started, and we will have to continue, like the development of expressways going out of Metro Manila.
Yeah, but Secretary, in terms of siguro going outside the actual projects, in terms of the processes kung bakit kaya na-delay or hindi natapos or natagalan yung ibang proyekto po, may nakita po ba kayong dahilan that you would want to change or improve?
Well, I think, na-estimed lang. I'm sure that, the past administrations and worldwide, because of the pandemic, that has actually affected everything in the economic development of the country, So I think that's the only reason why it has slowed down a little bit in the implementation of these projects. Otherwise, it was just, the build program started very vigorously, and there had been several actually that were completed.
Our one-on-one with DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan continues after the break. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation. We'll be right back. You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Ruth Cabal. Still with us, Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan. Secretary, I'd like to go to one of the biggest challenges that the new government, the new Marcos administration, has had to face, the magnitude 7 earthquake in northern Luzon. Can you tell us about the assessment of the damages and the rehabilitation plan so far?
Well, yeah, we're very happy actually to report that we expected. Well, because of 7.3 intensity would have resulted actually into many damages, like the last earthquake in 1970s. But this time, I think, right after the earthquake, the President has instructed us to move and see and clear out all transport lines towards going to Abra and going to Mountain Province and Baguio, because this is the area that was concentration of the earthquake. And luckily, just after one day, we were able to clear all the national roads leading to Abra, leading to Baguio, all the roads. The only problem at the time is actually we have to close actually Cannon Road going to Baguio because of the aftershocks, and there were still some debris or stones that were falling down. So, but right after that, I think we opened it anyway to traffic. So, the only problem that we have encountered actually in terms of mobility in the Cordilleras is actually the road going to Bontoc. That's the Halsema Highway, and we have a big landslide in Mount Data. That even up to now, as we speak, we are still in the process of clearing it up. But I think in a few days, I think we should be able to clear it already.
Secretary, very vivid rin kasi yung videos na lumabas of the historical sites and even yung tourist areas that were damaged.
Yes.
So what's the plan for this?
Well, restoration. We had been there, and we have been asked actually to do some technical investigations as well. But the restoration of the historical sites need a very expert expertise that is needed with the historical commission. So we have to engage the expert in the restoration. But nevertheless, I think the structural integrity of the buildings are intact. It's just superficial damages on the outside and things like this. We did not see any major, especially in Vigan, the historical buildings in Vigan. We found it still to be structurally stable. But of course, in some of the facades and things like this, there has been some damages, and we need the expertise of yung restoration experts.
And talking about calamities, because recently there's a report that 1 billion pesos in calamity fund was issued to the DPWH, and some critics are reacting that just a month into the new administration, you have this big amount released. But the Budget Department is saying there's nothing irregular about this. Ano po ba yung proseso sa paggamit at pag-release nitong calamity fund to DPWH?
Well, I think, we have to restore what has been damaged in the calamity areas, like what happened in Cordilleras and Region 1. So there are several things that we have to do there. Aside from that, there had been also some leftovers of Typhoon Odette if you like, in the Visayas and Mindanao. We need actually to repair all the school buildings for the opening of classes and things like this. No, I don't see any irregularity in the release. We need actually the funds calamity to respond actually and be able to restore some of the damages at this time.
And Secretary, you already mentioned in terms naman of classrooms that have to be set up, because the DepEd was earlier saying about a shortage of 400,000 classrooms. Where are we in this?
Yes, I think this is one challenge that we are trying to face together with the Department of Education, and no less than the President has actually instructed me to look for modular, prototype, resilient school buildings, easy to erect, but it has to be resilient in terms of calamities and things like this. So we are in the process of formulating modular types of school buildings at this point in time to be able to quickly respond to the shortage of classrooms. We may not be able to finish all the 400,000 in a very short time, but I think at least if we are able to find a technology that we are able to adapt, especially in calamity-stricken areas, then that would be good.
He wants an inclusive, infrastructure program, not just centered in Metro Manila. So this is one of the ways in which you can be more responsive, no? The hospitals outside and other infrastructure projects.
Yes. Yes, I think this is the policy of the President, actually, that everybody has to be served. Yes. Everybody has to be served at this point in time. He does not want to leave anybody not included in the development program of government. So he's very concerned about livelihood of the Filipino people. In terms of infrastructure development, this is one area where we have to focus, actually.
Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan is still with us after the break. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation. We'll be right back. You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. I'm Ruth Cabal. Our guest for this one-on-one special, Public Works and Highways Secretary Manuel Bonoan. Secretary, let's go to the perennial problem that every administration has to face. Traffic in Metro Manila and other major cities in the country. What's your plan for this?
Well, as far as traffic problems in Metro Manila is concerned, I think the department is just trying to put up other infrastructure facilities like additional bridges across Pasig River, Marikina River, so that there will be more accessibility between the north and south sector of Metro Manila. But probably that's just about it for Metro Manila at this point in time. What we are trying to do is to encourage actually the development of more highways or expressways going out of Manila for the development of other areas for economic development, to disperse the economic development
outside of Metro Manila.
Things like this.
Si former DPWH Secretary Mark Villar had yung EDSA decongestion program. So marami pong ginawa, di ba, na bridges, skyways dito sa Metro Manila. Pero parang hindi pa rin na-decongest because we're looking at pre-pandemic levels of traffic. Halimbawa sa EDSA. And critics are saying, kasi daw yung program is not people-oriented. Halimbawa for more public transport or more walkable roads for bicycles also. May ganun po bang plano kayo?
Not with DPWH. I think Ruth
More of MMDA.
With MMDA. Actually, they're planning walkway from Cubao to Pasig and things like this. That would help. What we have contributed actually is contributing with the MMDA is actually providing the bike lanes for bikers actually to use, actually, and do not mingle with the traffic per se.
Another perennial problem, sir, flood control. You have just a few minutes of rains, instantly flooded na yung several major roads. What will we do in terms of improving flood control?
Well, this I have to I have to delineate a little bit on the flood control for Metro Manila. If we're talking of Metro Manila, because the internal drainage and flood control problems, localized flooding problems in Metro Manila is under the Metropolitan Development Authority. But the Department of Public Works and Highways is to some extent, and to a great extent, is assisting actually in the overall flood control program of Metro Manila by, we now have a big program of upgrading the pumping stations all over Metro Manila at this time. I think we have 30 online pumping stations because these were built a long time ago, and they need to be readjusted or increase their capacities and things like this. So we have this program. But other than that, the internal drainage system in Metro Manila is with MMDA. The only problem here is actually the drainage system in Metro Manila is more than 50 years old.
Yes.
And, population has grown so big.
When it was planned, ang tagal na, no? Maliit pa yung population, sir.
Maliit pa. And at that time, meron pa yung mga open spaces where the rains can percolate and go down there. But this time, the runoff is wala na, hindi na makapercolate. So, and I think the main problem really is antiquated na yung smaller yung pipes, and they need to be replaced and rehabilitated with bigger ones.
Secretary, now I'd like to go talk about outside of DPWH programs, no? Because you've been in the agency for a long time. You were telling me since the time of former President Marcos Sr., no? You know how the operations go, and I think you also know that it's been, repeatedly tagged as one of the most corrupt government agencies. So in terms of corruption, ano po ang plano nyo?
Well, I think we continue to professionalize the people in the department. I think I can only recall that one of the best times that I had with the department is during the time of Secretary Vihilar, when everybody was disciplined actually in that department. You don't monkey with him, because I think he's going to have you at your back, And I think this is one thing that I'm trying to inculcate to them, And for me, I think management by example is leadership by example is another thing that I am trying to do in the department again. I have worked with many people in the department. They're professional people. And I think they're going to toe the line for as long as you show them an example that, you mean business in the department.
So here's the last question. Secretary, the Duterte administration promised the golden age of infrastructure. This time, under the Marcos administration, under your leadership, how will the infrastructure program look like? Well,
as I said, the infrastructure program will be continued. I think if it's golden age of infrastructure, we'll continue with the golden age of infrastructure. I think that's the aim of the president. And we will, as he said, we have to build better. More.
BBM, build better, more. Thank you very much for your time, Secretary Manuel Bonoan. And thank you for joining us in this special presentation. I'm Ruth Cabal.